Hi guys, this is Dr. Joe Borio with this week's Health Kick, and I was having a conversation with my son a few minutes ago, and we were discussing the topic for today, and it's actually my son's idea to talk about diabetes. He said they were talking about it in school this week, and I thought it would be a perfect topic because it's at epidemic proportions in the United States, type 2 diabetes, and that's really the disease that we cause ourselves from the lifestyle that we've chosen. It's making us a very sick nation. It's making our children very sick. It's creating childhood obesity. It's creating early heart disease and renal disease and liver failure and arthritic changes and all kinds of other health problems. It's leading to greater increases in healthcare costs, and it's looking to really put an enormous burden on the healthcare system if we don't make some dramatic changes. And who's at fault? Well, I don't think there's a big conspiracy, but I think what happened is slowly, really since the early 1900s, that our life has gotten busier and time has become more precious for us. We started to process our foods. We started to prepare foods. We started to manufacture food, if you will. As a result of that, what's happened is the food that we now eat has caused all kinds of different diseases. As a result of that, what's happened is we've stripped the food of nutrients. So we've processed it, so we've made it too simple in its carbohydrate structure. We've stripped it of all the nutrients that are supposed to be in the food, and now the food is less nutritious, and it becomes very toxic or sick, and it creates different types of illness in our body, and certainly, unfortunately, it creates a lot of illness in our children. And in my opinion, it's unacceptable, and I think at this point, because we know the truth and we know the facts, you know, we as leaders, both as parents, as educators, as administrators for our school system, we need to take a different stance. We do have a lot of that responsibility on our shoulders, and unfortunately it's caused many deaths in our children, and we do have some blood in our hands, and unless we make a change, one of the things you can start with is not putting soda machines in our school, not putting highly processed foods in the school line, not serving our kids highly processed food for lunch, having somebody actually sit down and look at what we're feeding our children, not based upon how cheap it is and how quickly we can feed the masses as if there's some kind of group of cattle going through, but how can we feed our kids highly nutritious foods, both so that they can live longer because we're teaching them better lifestyle, but also so that they can think better and perform better in school. So let's talk about diabetes here for a minute. Diabetes is actually two factors are involved. The pancreas, which makes insulin in response to sugar, so it controls that hormone, controls the amount of sugar in the blood system. And secondly is going to be sugar, glucose. So we've heard of simple and complex carbohydrates. I'm going to give you an example of one of those right now. Simple carbohydrate is kind of like think of a pearl necklace. If I have a pearl necklace and each one of those pearls represents a molecule of sugar, a glucose, a unit of energy, if you will. If I tie them all together, right, it's going to take a while to untie them. Think of it as like gallons of gasoline. If I have 20 gallons of gasoline and I tie them all together with a rope, in order to get 1 gallon off, I got to take time and energy. I can spend my energy and time to untie 1 gallon to go to the next one, next one, next one. So if I eat a food that's a complex carb, my body can't extract all that energy or sugar all at once, so it has to untie all the knots. And in doing so, what happens is the amount of sugar released in my circulatory system is done at a very slow rate. So my pancreas has to do very little work. It trickles in a little bit of insulin, and therefore my pancreas is healthier, my circulatory system's healthier, I'm healthier as a result of it. If I untie all the gallons of gasoline or untie all the beads in the pearl necklace or what have you, and I swallow them all down at once, there is no time or expenditure of energy. So as a result, all of the sugar goes into my body all at once, and as a result, my insulin and my pancreas have to work extremely hard, producing an enormous amount of hormone to be released in the body. And after I do that day in and day out, I'm not saying you never can have junk food, but day in and day out, what happens is my body stops paying attention to the insulin, and I become insulin resistant, hence type 2 diabetes. Now I got to take a drug or an injection or a pump for something that was totally preventable in the first place. So anything that we're eating processed, like pancakes and pancake syrup and high sugar foods and cereals that are really high in sugars and cakes, cookies, and candies and soda, my God. And we dump this stuff in our kids and the pixie candies and all the other junk. And I start loading that in my body. My body was never designed to even understand what that is. It doesn't have any defense for it. And as a result, it just makes me sicker. The result of it is very damaging. If I take a steak that's red, like a raw piece of meat, and I take that steak, which is flexible and mushy and gushy and pliable, and I cook it on the grill, right? And I make it really well done. What happens to the meat? Not only does it get smaller, but it gets hard and stiff, and it's difficult to pry and bend and so forth. That's what happens to the proteins. It's called denature. Same will happen in an egg, right? You got egg whites, you put it on a pan, it gets white and gets stiff and changes the structure of the protein. Well, the same will actually happen to your tissue, and it doesn't need heat to do it. You can do it chemically. The chemical in the body that's causing it is actually glucose, and it's called glycosylation. But what happens is it actually cooks you. So your muscles will then become very stiff. Your joints will become very stiff, just like that meat going to well done, right? What's it going to do to the nerves? Neuropathy. It damages all the nerves, not only brain and spinal cord, but all the peripheral nerves. You can't feel your hands, you can't feel your feet. All the messages going through your body are greatly affected and damaged. What's going to happen to the kidney? It's going to get hard like that piece of meat. The liver, the same thing. I'm going to go through renal failure and liver failure, pancreatic failure, arterial sclerosis, atherosclerosis. The arteries become harder. The heart becomes harder, losing ability to pump and circulate. So I go through congestive heart failure. I mean, it's just an absolute process. It's a perfect description of a diabetic in the end stages of their life, and all of it is totally preventable. And it's unfortunate that we have to go to that point before we can make some changes. How do we make some changes? Reality is this: if it's processed, don't eat it. Certainly don't make it a main staple in your diet. How about that? So it doesn't mean you can't ever go have pizza and a Coke once in a while, but the bottom line, if you're having that every night or every day, if you're having pancakes and, you know, like I said, a lot of syrup and sugar cereals, cakes, cookies, and candies, you know, at night after your dinner, you're pounding cakes, cookies, and candies and so forth, and you're doing that every night, you are just guaranteed for obesity and guaranteed for heart disease and guaranteed for diabetes. So the bottom line is you need energy in the morning and you need to repair at night. Remember that. So what do I need for energy? I need complex carbohydrates. And what do I need for repair? I need protein. So the morning and afternoon, you want to have basically your sugars, but the healthy sugars, like an oatmeal or grains, fruits and vegetables, that type of stuff. At the end of the day, what you want to have is protein and vegetable, a piece of fish and a vegetable, a piece of meat and a vegetable, something that your body says, hey, I need to repair myself from this. You certainly don't need a bunch of sugar in your body at the end of the day because your body's going to go to bed. So if I have sugar, what happens? That sugar gets converted into a fat. It's called a triglyceride. So you get these patients that, you know, they go to bed every night and then they have cakes, cookies, or candy as a treat for dessert. And guess what happens? Their triglyceride level goes up, more prone to having heart disease and all kinds of other problems in their body. When in reality, if you want to have that piece of cake, all right, don't take it out of your diet. I would, but don't. Have it for lunch rather than dinner. You'll probably drop 10 pounds and it'll lower your triglycerides almost immediately. So when we get into diabetes, what we have to understand is that our body is not equipped to handle all of that sugar, and it makes us extremely sick, and we need to do a better job. So if it's a processed food, don't eat a lot of it. Don't make it a main staple in your diet. And certainly the general rule I do is if I go to the store, the produce department is where you want to hang out. Right when you walk in the store, you got all that produce. That's where you want to do about 90% of your shopping, right there. You got your produce. All of that stuff is what your body was designed to eat, and it's beautiful stuff for your body. Certainly you got pesticides, herbicides, unfortunately, so try to go towards the organic and certainly clean it and wash it. To wash off as much as you can, but the reality is that's where you want to spend most of your time. The 10% of the rest of the time you can circulate throughout the rest of the grocery store. But remember, if it wasn't around 1,000 years ago and you're buying it with a package with a label on it, your body really isn't meant to eat it. If I grab an orange or an apple, it doesn't have any label of ingredients because you know what's the label of ingredients is nature, and that's what we're designed to eat. Okay, this is Dr. Joe with this week's Health Kick. We're out of time. Remember, you guys need to eat well. You need to exercise. You need to rest properly. You need to drink a lot of water. You need to have positive mental thoughts inside your head. You got to be saying really good, happy things to yourself. That definitely reflects on how healthy you are. And last and most importantly, make sure you, your husband, your wife, your kids, your grandmother, your grandfather, anyone you love, anyone you care about, they need to be under regular chiropractic care, guys, because if your brain can't communicate to your body, if your spine's sick, those messages, those important messages don't get where they're supposed to, and you're going to get sicker and die a lot sooner. This has been Dr. Joe Borio with this week's Health Kick. Have a great week.